The internet is filled with creepy content, but some videos go beyond disturbing. These are the recordings that leave you questioning what's real, what's staged, and what should have never been captured at all. Tonight, we're diving into 6 of the most disturbing YouTube videos ever caught on camera. Let's dive straight into the first video. It all happened on December 5th, 2009. Inside a popular nightclub called The Lame Horse, the celebration was in full swing. Located in Perm, Russia, the venue had just reached its 8-year anniversary, and over 300 people had gathered to celebrate. At roughly 5,000 square feet, the club wasn't huge, but that night, it was packed. A cameraman and interviewer had been invited to document the evening. The footage shows them casually walking through the club, chatting with partygoers and capturing the atmosphere. Everyone seemed to be in good spirits. The night was just getting started, and the energy inside the building was electric. After a few short interviews, the camera pans to the dance floor. By this point, over 300 people had packed into the building. The atmosphere was lively, and the MC was doing his job, keeping the energy up by joking around with 2 young women who were clearly guests at the bar. While the camera is focused on the MC and 2 young women laughing near the stage, a woman on the far right side of the frame, barely visible, suddenly turns her head. Her eyes lock onto something behind her. She looks confused, almost concerned. Noticing her strange reaction, the cameraman slowly turns to follow her gaze. And that's when we see it. Somewhere above the crowd, a tiny spark from the pyrotechnic display had made contact with the ceiling, specifically with a set of decorative twigs that had been added for the celebration. In seconds, the spark turned into flame. At first, no one understood what was happening. Most people just stood there, frozen. But then, the MC, realizing the danger, yelled out over the speakers, "Ladies and gentlemen, guests of the club, we are on fire. Please leave the hall." Panic set in immediately. Everyone rushed toward the exits. But that's when things got worse. According to the club's floor plan, there were 2 exits, the main door and another located behind the stage. But the second exit had no signs. Most people didn't even know it existed. So nearly all 300 guests ran for the front door at once. So escape for the 300+ people trapped inside was quickly becoming impossible. And by now, thick smoke had filled the entire venue. As the crowd surged toward the single open exit, people began to get stuck. The narrow doorway became a choke point, creating a deadly logjam that soon turned into a human crush. Dozens were pressed against each other with no room to move, and the more people tried to force their way through, the worse it got. Meanwhile, those still on the dance floor were left behind, completely disoriented, unable to see or breathe in the dense black smoke. And then, within the chaos, the camera suddenly cuts out. It's not until several minutes later that we see footage again. The cameraman, along with a few others, had made it outside. He's now filming from the middle of the road, showing glimpses of the chaos spilling out onto the street. And that's when the final devastating detail comes into focus. According to survivors, no fire trucks or ambulances arrived for nearly 20 minutes. One survivor recalled, "After I got out, there were no firemen or emergency services, just 2 ambulances. They took 6 or 7 people and left. I didn't see any more after that. The firemen pulled people out half-dressed and laid them on the cold asphalt. Nobody helped them. They were lying there for over an hour, and it was minus 16 degrees outside." Many of those rescued from the building, severely burned, in shock, and barely clothed, were left on the freezing pavement for over an hour. No blankets, no aid, just silence. To this day, it's unclear how many people died from exposure alone. But it's widely believed that the emergency response failure cost many lives that could have been saved. In total, 156 people died, 101 at the scene, and another 55 in the hospital, making it the deadliest fire in modern Russian history. The footage from that night remains among the most haunting ever captured. But 2 moments in particular continue to stand out. The quiet look of concern from the woman just off screen as she sensed the danger before anyone else. And that first flicker of flame on the ceiling, barely noticeable at first, that would go on to engulf the entire building and claim the lives of so many. If you thought this was shocking, just wait till you see the next one. Quick interruption. If you're enjoying this video, why not hit that subscribe button? We're on a mission to hit 150,000 subscribers, and when we do, 3 lucky fans will win a free item of their choice from our merch store. Right now, 73.6% of you watching haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free, and your support helps us make even more awesome videos. So, don't miss out. Subscribe, and let's get back to the video.
Love me sweet, never.
It was supposed to be a day of celebration for David Turpin and his wife Louise, yet another wedding anniversary marked by a family tradition, renewing their vows in Las Vegas. What made the moment even more special was that all 13 of their children were in attendance. When David and Louise were first married back in 1985, he was a 23-year-old man, and she was just 16. Despite the decades that had passed, their love still seemed to be going strong. And in a tradition that became almost ritualistic, they renewed their vows in nearly the same way every year, something that's been captured in multiple clips now scattered across YouTube. These videos didn't just show the couple's love for each other. They also appeared to show their love for their children. Together, they presented the image of a massive, close-knit family unit, the Turpins. Smiling faces, coordinated outfits, and sentimental moments painted a picture of unity and warmth. But that footage would only be the beginning of a much darker story. Not long after those family videos surfaced online, one of the Turpin daughters, who could be seen in that earlier footage, began posting videos of her own. She was just 17 at the time. Her name was Jordan Turpin, and she quietly launched a secret YouTube channel that no one else in her family knew about. On this channel, Jordan would post videos of herself singing original songs, recorded from her bedroom.
It's over, it's over, it's over.
In a few of those clips, she offered extremely brief, almost unnoticeable glimpses into her home life. To anyone scrolling by, her content seemed innocent, typical for a teenage girl. Her final video, like the others, was just another singing performance.
What now do I do? Look at me, here I am.
And throughout the entire life of the channel, there were no obvious red flags, no direct cries for help. Jordan never really opened up to the camera. She didn't share personal stories or ask questions that might have revealed her true circumstances. She used the page solely for her music, which is exactly why it was almost impossible to detect the horrifying reality that lay behind those walls. What was happening inside the Turpin household had remained invisible for years and would have likely continued for many more had it not been for Jordan's courage. Just 1 week after posting her final video, Jordan made a desperate 911 call.
This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
I just went away from home because I live in a family of 15. We have abusing parents. Did you hear that? They hit us, they throw us across the room. They pull our hair, they yank out our hair. My 2 little sisters right now are chained up.
In the call, recorded and released later, we hear Jordan explain to the dispatcher that her parents had been abusing her, along with all of her siblings. Given the severity of her claims, police immediately dispatched an officer to her location. Jordan had fled the house and was waiting in a nearby neighborhood. The entire encounter was captured on the officer's body camera.
What's going on?
Okay. I just ran away from home.
Okay.
And I live in a family of 15.
Okay.
My 2 little sisters right now are chained up.
They're chained up?
Yes,
Where are they chained up at?
on their bed. They're chained up because they stole mother's food.
Okay.
But they stole it because they were hungry.
Jordan explained that 2 of her siblings were currently chained to their beds, punished for trying to take food from their mother. Even more disturbing, Jordan confessed that her nervous, awkward behavior was because she had never really met anyone from the outside world before.
Sorry if I talk too much. I've never talked to anybody out there, so I've never been alone with a person, so it's very hard for me to talk.
In order to escape and get help, she had to literally flee her own home, something she had never been allowed to do.
And the reason I managed to get out here, this is one of the most scariest things I've ever done. I'm terrified.
At first, the officer seemed unsure. He even asked if Jordan was on medication, a question that confused her deeply.
Do you take any medication?
What's medication?
Medication?
Yeah, what's medication?
Do you take pills? Do you take pills?
She responded honestly, saying she didn't know what that word meant. That moment changed everything. The officer began to understand the gravity of the situation. Jordan had brought proof with her, images and evidence of the abuse.
I don't have proof of everything, but I have proof that my sisters are chained up. Look at them. See, those are the places that make it on them. And see how dirty she is? We're so filthy. We don't take baths. We don't.
How did your sisters get like this? Your parents chained them up?
Yes.
What followed was one of the most shocking discoveries in recent memory. That same night, police entered the Turpin home and uncovered the full extent of the nightmare. Inside, they were hit with an overwhelming stench of garbage and human waste. The floors and surfaces were filthy, almost entirely covered in trash. They found 12 other siblings inside. One of them had been chained up for weeks. 2 others had just recently been released. The children were malnourished, frail, and covered in bruises from years of beatings. Many of them were so stunted from abuse that officers couldn't even tell their ages. One sibling was 29 years old, but weighed only 89 pounds and was mistaken for a child. They had been fed once a day and only in small portions. They were each allowed to shower just once a year. The abuse inflicted by Louise and David Turpin was beyond comprehension. But perhaps the most heinous act of all was committed by Louise herself. Multiple reports stated that she had prostituted several of her own children to wealthy men for money. Throughout their entire lives, the children were locked inside the house, tortured by the very people who claimed to love them. And all the while, the family maintained a carefully curated online image, photos, and videos portraying them as a perfect, happy unit. Which brings us back to those YouTube clips. You might wonder, how were the kids allowed to attend those weddings if they were never permitted to leave the house? Well, those vow renewal ceremonies were likely the only times the children were allowed outside. Not as a reward, but as a performance, a cover story, a way to sell the illusion of a happy family to the world. The smiling faces in those clips? Those were likely some of the only moments of freedom the Turpin children ever experienced. As for Jordan's YouTube channel, the reason it was so secret was because any form of contact with the outside world was strictly forbidden. Social media, TV, the internet, all banned. If her parents had discovered her account, the punishment would have been unimaginable. But that didn't stop her. Jordan kept uploading, maybe hoping that someone, anyone, out there would see her, hear her, know she existed. In many ways, those quiet uploads showed the incredible bravery she carried within her. The same bravery that would lead her to risk everything, to escape, expose the truth, and save her siblings. Without her, they would likely still be imprisoned today. The full case of the Turpin family is too complex to fully unpack here. But eventually, David and Louise went to trial and were sentenced to life in prison. The 13 children, forever scarred by what they endured, were finally free. At least, they were supposed to be.
A foster family in Paris has been accused of abusing several foster children, including some of the Turpin siblings.
In what might be the most tragic twist in an already devastating story, it was recently revealed that the foster family assigned to care for 5 of the Turpin children is now under investigation for abuse. The foster parents, Marcelino and Rosa Orgon, along with their son Lenny, are facing over a dozen charges, including child cruelty, witness intimidation, and false imprisonment. Even more disturbing, Marcelino is accused of performing lewd acts on a minor, allegedly molesting 2 of the children he was supposed to protect. It's almost too much to process that these kids, after escaping one house of horrors, would find themselves trapped in another. But amid the tragedy, there is still a glimmer of hope. Some of the Turpin children have begun building lives of their own, lives free from abuse. Jordan, in particular, has become a TikTok star, thriving in her newfound freedom and connecting with the world she was once kept from. So no, not all of this story is completely devastating, but some of it absolutely is. And for the rest of the Turpin siblings, we can only hope they are finally placed in a home full of love, one that offers them the peace, safety, and care they've been denied since the day they were born. It's heartbreaking to think that such things can happen behind closed doors, right at home, in the one place that's meant to feel safe. But what if your home is safe until something from the outside suddenly turns it into a place of fear? On April 9th, 2015, during the evening hours, a tornado began to form near the small town of Franklin Grove, Illinois. Within minutes, the swirling mass of wind grew larger, far larger than anything the area had seen in recent history. Several miles away, in the nearby town of Fairdale, 67-year-old Geraldine Schultz noticed the tornado forming in the distance. Concerned by what she saw, she called her husband, Clem, into the kitchen. The two stood there side by side, watching the dark funnel cloud through the window. For the couple, tornadoes were nothing new. They had lived in the region for years and had seen their fair share of storms. Clem was confident that this one would pass them by, likely veering east. Still, to be cautious, he went upstairs to retrieve some lanterns in case the power went out. But when Clem reached the bedroom, everything changed. From the upstairs window, he got a much clearer view of the tornado, and it was significantly closer than before. The winds were now raging at over 200 miles per hour, and the storm had officially been classified as an EF4. This wasn't just any tornado. It was one of the largest and most violent twisters the area had ever experienced. Mesmerized by the monstrous eye of the storm, Clem did what many people might do in disbelief. He began recording from the window, still convinced that the storm would miss them. But he was wrong. In reality, the tornado wasn't moving east. It was heading straight toward their home. And by the time Clem realized the truth, it was too late. There was no time to run. no place to hide. All he could do was stand there and watch as nature unleashed its full fury. The tornado made a direct hit. Within seconds, the powerful EF4 tore through the house. Before Clem could even react, the home that had stood for over a century was ripped apart, reduced to splinters and debris in an instant. Beneath that mountain of rubble were Clem and Geraldine, his wife of 25 years.
They got fire rescue on the way.
Against all odds, Clem survived. He somehow managed to pull himself out from the wreckage, emerging from the flattened remains of his home and into the field of debris. The storm would go on to destroy numerous houses across the region and claim the lives of 2 people. One of them was Clem's neighbor and close friend, Jacqueline Closa, who lived in the home Clem had just filmed being obliterated seconds before the tornado hit him. The other was Geraldine, Clem's wife and best friend. In the days following the disaster, a family member combing through the debris stumbled upon Clem's phone. Miraculously, it still worked. And on it was the now infamous video, a first-person recording of a man being hit directly by a tornado and somehow surviving. The video is raw. The imagery, the sounds, and the context combine into one of the most surreal and disturbing clips you'll ever find. And to this day, it remains one of the darkest videos on all of YouTube. But if you thought that was disturbing, then brace yourself for what's coming next. Because something is about to happen that no one has ever been able to explain. It was a quiet January night in western Taiwan. The Yuan Land Finance and Economics Building, a 16-story tower, held a mix of office spaces and private residences. But past midnight, the place was nearly silent, except for the building manager, who was just settling in for another uneventful shift in the lobby. That calm didn't last long. Sometime after midnight, a woman rushed into the building with a small child. The manager didn't recognize her as a resident, and since the offices were all closed for the night, he stopped her and asked why she was there. But she barely acknowledged him. She just said they were there to meet a friend, then quickly stepped into the elevator and vanished from sight. Something about the encounter unsettled him. He couldn't explain it. He just had a bad feeling. Morning came, but the woman and her child never came back down. Out of curiosity, the manager checked the building's CCTV footage to see what floor they went to. That's when he saw something strange. Around 12:29 a.m., the woman is seen in the elevator, frantically pressing the button for the 11th floor. As the doors close, she takes off her coat and lays it on the floor. Then she does the same for the child. When the elevator reaches the 11th floor, she calmly removes her shoes, steps out with the child, and quickly walks down the hallway, heading in the direction of the stairwell. That stairwell leads to the roof. After that moment, they're never seen on camera again. The building manager, now seriously worried, calls the police. Based on what he saw, officers feared the worst, that the woman may have taken her own life and the life of her child by jumping from the rooftop. This theory was only reinforced by one small detail. In many East Asian cultures, it's considered respectful to remove your shoes before entering the afterlife. But when police searched the entire perimeter of the building, they found nothing. No bodies, no blood, no trace at all. They went back to the CCTV footage and reviewed every second of it. Almost all exits were covered by cameras. If the woman and her child had left the building, it would have been captured. But that elevator footage was the last time they were seen. anywhere. So, if they didn't jump, and they didn't leave, then where were they? That question launched a full-scale search of the building. Police went door to door. Every room, every hallway, every stairwell. Nothing. No one had seen them. No one had heard anything. And when the sweep was finished, all they found were a few chilling clues. The coats and shoes left behind in the elevator, the woman's parked moped outside, and a single empty suitcase lying at the top of the stairwell leading to the roof. Police described the suitcase as suspicious, but never released its contents. In fact, after the initial report, they refused to confirm whether it was even connected to the case. It was like the woman and her child had just vanished. The building was searched again and again. As recently as 2013, authorities even checked the water pipes and tanks, taking inspiration from a different case on the other side of the world. But still, no trace of them. After the footage was released to the public, a man named Zhang came forward. He said the woman in the video was his wife. The child was their 4-year-old daughter. According to Zhang, her surname was Liu, and they had 4 children together. But their relationship was far from perfect. Some reports say they had a serious argument that night. Others suggest it may have been abusive, possibly prompting her to flee the house with their youngest child. Their eldest daughter later told reporters that Liu had said she was going to stay with a friend for a few days, but she never came back. Despite finally identifying the woman, police were no closer to solving the case. Since that night, there have been no confirmed sightings, no financial activity. The daughter's school records haven't changed. It's like they simply stopped existing. Locals have come up with 3 main theories. The first is supernatural. Some believe the pair crossed into another dimension, or were taken by something beyond our understanding. The belief is so widespread that the 11th floor of the building is almost completely empty. Only one family remains, and they say all their neighbors moved out, too scared to stay. The second theory is that the woman and child died in the building but were never found. Police considered this for years, but due to Taiwan's extreme summer heat, experts say a body would have been discovered by now, either by smell or accident. That brings us to the third theory. Somehow, they managed to leave the building without being seen. Some suggest there's a blind spot in the CCTV coverage, just big enough to sneak through. But that would take precise knowledge of the building's layout. And as far as anyone knows, Liu had never been there before. So how would she know where to go? And why would she go through all that effort? Even today, none of these questions have answers. Why that building? Why the 11th floor? Why leave behind their shoes and coats? And most of all, if they escaped, how have they never been seen again? No trace, no leads, just one grainy elevator video, and silence. An absolute conclusion is something that perhaps we may never get, and instead, we're simply left with this chilling video, which is undoubtedly one of YouTube's darkest. And for now, let's move on to the next disturbing video. It was a tense scene in the city of Culiacan, Mexico. A group of heavily armed officers had surrounded a house, weapons drawn. But this wasn't just any raid. This was a moment that would go down in history. Inside that home was Ovidio Guzman Lopez, the son of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, one of the most infamous drug lords the world has ever known.
There he is, the man known as El Chapo, finally back in custody after 13 years on the run since bribing his way out of prison.
Though El Chapo had been captured back in 2014, Ovidio had managed to remain free, continuing his father's legacy by taking on a key leadership role within the Sinaloa cartel. But this day was different. This day was meant to end that legacy. According to reports, the operation had been planned by the Mexican government as a direct attempt to weaken the cartel's grip on the region. And for the officers involved, this was supposed to be a defining moment, a clean, tactical victory.
Sal, Ovidio. Vente, tranquilo, señor, tranquilo. Venga, ven, Ovidio, venga, tranquilo, salga aquí, venga. Tranquilo, aquí, señor. Tranquilo, listo. ¿Están aquí tus manos? ¿Traes armas?
And in that moment, it was. Ovidio was taken into custody without resistance. Not a single shot was fired. The scene was locked down and secured. On paper, it was a perfect operation. Had the story ended there, it would have been a major win for Mexican authorities. But instead, it became something much darker.
The city of Culiacan, Mexico, the historic homeland to the violent Sinaloa drug cartel, turned into a battle zone Thursday.
Within hours, the city of Culiacan, the historic stronghold of the Sinaloa cartel, was transformed into an all-out war zone. Over 700 armed cartel fighters flooded the streets, unleashing chaos in retaliation for Ovidio's arrest. This, despite the fact that officers had already made a video call to the cartel, urging them to stand down, footage that can be seen at the end of the body cam clip. But the cartel refused to listen. The military presence in the city was quickly overwhelmed. Fires burned in the distance, gunfights erupted across neighborhoods, and civilians were caught in the crossfire. With countless lives at stake and total collapse looming, the Mexican government made a shocking decision. They let Ovidio Guzman go. The move stunned the world, but almost immediately, the violence stopped. The streets went quiet, and for a brief moment, it seemed like peace had returned. But inside the minds of the cartel, things were far from over. Which brings us back to this video. In it, we see footage from the original raid. Multiple officers can be seen taking part in the operation. One of them is a man named Eduardo, the officer in charge. At the time, it probably felt like they had done the right thing, that they had struck a blow against one of the most powerful cartels in the world. But instead of being hailed as heroes, they became targets. Just days after the operation, Eduardo was ambushed by cartel members while sitting in his car. A rain of bullets tore through the vehicle, 155 shots in total. He never stood a chance, and Eduardo wouldn't be the last. While he was the only officially confirmed death among the officers involved, rumors soon began to circulate. Many believe that every single officer seen in that original footage has since been hunted down and killed, picked off one by one in cold blood as a message to the world. And when you watch the video again, when you see how calm Ovidio looked as he was being arrested, it's hard not to wonder, did he already know? Because in the end, even though he was the one in handcuffs, it felt like the officers were the ones who had walked into his trap. And that's what makes this video one of the many chilling pieces of content buried deep in the darkest corners of YouTube. Videos that remind us just how thin the line can be between justice and terror. Did you find these 5 YouTube videos disturbing? Then brace yourself for the last disturbing video. Our next and last story takes us to one of the most remote corners of the world, to a little-known village in northeastern Somalia called Halam. In October of 2021, a strange video began quietly circulating online. At first glance, the footage seemed entirely unremarkable. It shows 2 local men from the village being interviewed separately. In the background of one interview, a few individuals can be seen going about their business. They appear to be working, either preparing for some kind of event or possibly just tending to farmland. Due to the language barrier and the absence of any English translation, it's impossible to determine what the interviews are about based on the footage alone. Everything seems ordinary. There's nothing to suggest that anything dark or unusual is happening, until you notice 2 very specific details. The first is the thumbnail. It shows a man who doesn't appear anywhere in the actual footage. He is tied up, looking visibly upset, while one of the interviewed men stands proudly next to him. The second is the video's title, which is written in Somali. When translated, it reads, "Guerrero, the killer of his mother, was shot dead today." This disturbing title, combined with the unsettling thumbnail, raised red flags for a few curious viewers who happened to stumble across the obscure upload. And those who chose to look deeper were met with something far more disturbing than they had anticipated. A simple Google search of the video's title pulls up multiple uploads, different versions of the same event. In one of them, the man in the blue shirt from the thumbnail is shown tied up, head lowered in what appears to be a public setting.
bishii toddobaad 2020 xukun dil ah ku riday Faarax Cabdi Maxamed oo hooyadii isku dilay tuulo Jalam ee gobolka Nugaal waxaana dilka geystay 17 bishii 6 2002.
Further searching brings up a slew of news articles, mostly from Somali outlets, that help explain the context of the video. And that's where the story takes a dark, tragic turn. The man shown bound in the footage is identified as Farah Abdi Muhammad. That summer, he had reportedly fallen into a drug-fueled rage, which ended in the murder of his own mother. Farah was one of 7 siblings. His actions didn't just destroy one life, they devastated an entire family. 6 others were left without a mother because of his violent outburst. Though the story received little attention from international media, it sent shockwaves through the small community of Hallam. His guilt was never in question. What remained was the issue of justice. With Farah quickly apprehended, a decision had to be made. Would prison suffice as punishment for a man who killed his own mother? Or should he face execution? Rather than leaving the decision to the state, local authorities gave the responsibility to Farah's own family. His surviving siblings were asked to decide what should happen next. Among them was Farah's brother, a man named Awe, and Awe made his decision very clear. Farah should be executed, just like their mother had been murdered. But Awe didn't stop there. He made a public proposal. He didn't just want justice, he wanted to send a message not just to Hallam, but to the entire region, that those who kill their mothers will face the same fate. To ensure that message would be heard loud and clear, Awe made one more shocking request. He asked to be the one to personally carry out the execution of his brother. On October 17, 2021, local news crews gathered in Hallam. Cameras rolled as Awe gave an interview, calmly speaking about what he was about to do. He even posed next to his brother Farah, who stood silently at his side, moments away from being executed. The situation was already unimaginably grim, but it became even darker when viewers realized what else was happening in the background of that interview. The men seen working behind Awe weren't just tending to crops or preparing for an event. They were actually digging Farah's grave, right there in full view of his brother, and only steps away from Farah himself. Farah was watching his own grave being prepared, and yet, he showed no signs of fear. In the moments that followed, Awe was handed a gun. He approached his brother, pressed the weapon to Farah's head, and pulled the trigger. The entire scene is haunting. What makes it all the more disturbing is the stillness of it all. Everyone involved seems shockingly calm, as if each person had accepted their role. Farah, Awe, and even the men digging the grave moved through the scene without emotion, without hesitation. There were no screams, no panic, no last words, just silence. Even Farah, whose life was about to end, appeared completely resigned, despite the fact that his own brother was about to execute him, and his grave was being dug right in front of him. It's a video layered in shock and horror, one that defies easy explanation. A public execution, a fratricide, a warning to others, a message carved into reality through action and death. And somehow, everyone seemed to understand. That's all for today, folks. If you want to see more of this creepy content, click on the video on screen.